The Body Knows, Episode 30, Love as Regulation. Love as Liberation. Welcome back to The Body Knows. In this episode, we come to what may be the most universal subject of them all, love. But not love as a greeting card sentiment, or love as a cultural cliché. Today, I want to invite you to see love as the body itself knows it, not only as emotion, but as synchrony, as nervous system regulation, as liberation. Love beyond sentiment. Because when we strip away all the stories we've been told about love, the romance scripts, the ideals, the fears, what remains is something astonishingly simple. Two nervous systems meeting, resonating, finding rhythm together. It's not that love lacks mystery or poetry, quite the opposite. But if we overlook its embodied nature, we risk missing its greatest power, the ability to soothe, regulate, and liberate us at the most fundamental level. Love as co-regulation. Think for a moment about a time when you held someone's hand, a child, a friend, a lover, and something shifted. Your heart rate slowed, your breath steadied. The chaos of the day seemed to lose its grip. That wasn't just sentiment, that was physiology. Your vagus nerve was responding to the touch. Oxytocin was being released, softening the edges of fear. Mirror neurons were syncing with the other's calm or presence. We often say, love makes me feel safe. But what is safety here? It's not an idea, it's a bodily state. Safety is when the nervous system moves from threat to rest, from hypervigilance to openness. Safety is when we can breathe deeply again, when digestion resumes, when our muscles soften because the body no longer believes it has to fight or flee. And in the presence of someone we trust, the body learns that safety is possible not just alone, but together. This is co-regulation, the dance of two systems tuning each other, stabilizing each other, finding rhythm in the push and pull of daily life. Love as the body's memory. Across this series, we've spoken often of trauma, how it loops, how it lodges in the body, how it replays itself in relationships. But the other side of the story, the one we don't hear as often, is that the body also remembers safety. It remembers warmth, rhythm, and resonance. The first experiences of love most of us had were not words, but touch, being held as infants, fed and rocked to sleep. Long before we could articulate, I am loved, our bodies were already writing the memory into the nervous system. Love is warmth, love is presence, love is rhythm. When love falters, when relationships wound, we often return to this primal imprint. A raised voice, a slammed door, a cold shoulder. They activate the amygdala as if the earliest bonds are at stake. But equally, when love is offered with sincerity, with patience, with presence, the body recognizes it. It softens, it surrenders, it knows, even before the mind can explain. This is love. Scenario, the hand in crisis. Let's ground this in a scenario. Imagine someone you love in distress. Maybe they've had terrible news. Maybe they're spiraling in fear. They're trembling, their breath is shallow, their words scattered. Instinctively, you reach for their hand. At first the tremor remains, their hand is cold, restless. But slowly, as your warmth steadies, you notice their grip shifting. Their breath begins to lengthen. Their shoulders ease down. Their eyes, once darting, now find yours, even for a moment. What has happened? Not magic, though it feels like it. What's happened is that your regulated nervous system has become an anchor for theirs. The vagus nerve, responding to gentle pressure and eye contact, has cued the parasympathetic system. You are safe. Cortisol, once spiking, begins to fall. Oxytocin rises. Their body has borrowed stability from yours, and together you are creating a shared state of calm. This is love, not as fantasy, but as lived biology. Why this matters? We live in a culture that often confuses love with possession, performance, or idealization. We measure love by how often someone calls, how grand their gestures are, and how well they meet our checklist of expectations. But the body knows differently. The body measures love in terms of regulation. Does this relationship leave me more grounded, more alive, more free, or more constricted, more anxious, more collapsed? I know in my own journey I once mistook intensity for love. I thought the roller coaster was proof of passion. The highs felt intoxicating, the lows felt unbearable. But the more I studied my own nervous system, the more I saw that wasn't love. That was dysregulation. True love didn't collapse me or send me chasing endlessly for stability. True love left me breathing deeper, standing taller, feeling more myself. And that, I believe, is the pivot we needed to make collectively. To move from love as possession, you are mine, to love as liberation. In your presence, I'm more myself, not less. Love as liberation. If co-regulation is one side of love, the way our systems sync and soothe each other, liberation is the other. Love doesn't just calm us, it frees us. Think of the relationships in your life where you felt most loved. Chances are they weren't the ones where you felt most controlled, most confined, most pressured. They were the ones where you could breathe, where your quirks, your fears, your longings were welcomed rather than shamed, where you felt seen without being reduced. This is the paradox. Love, when true, both grounds us and expands us. It regulates our body while liberating our spirit. It steadies us here and now, while opening us to possibilities we never imagined. The nervous system's highest gift, in that sense, love is not merely an emotion. It is the nervous system's highest form of healing. It's what happens when we're no longer stuck in survival, when fight or flight can give way to rest and digest, when vigilance melts into trust. Love is what makes the body feel safe enough to grow, to create, to connect, to dream. Without it, we may survive, but we rarely thrive. With it, we find the courage not just to endure life, but to live it fully. So in this episode, we'll dive deeper into love as the body knows it. First, through physiology, oxytocin, dopamine, and the vagus nerve, and how they turn affection into regulation. Then through liberation, love as expansion, as freedom, as a force that breaks chains rather than forges them. We'll weave in personal reflections, how my own understanding of love has shifted from need to sanctuary. And we'll explore practices that anchor love not in words alone, but in presence, breath, ritual, and attunement. Because in the end, love is not something we chase outside ourselves. It's something the body recognizes, resonates with, and remembers. So as we begin this conversation, I invite you to pause. Notice your breath. Notice your heartbeat. Bring to mind someone you love, not as ideal, not as fantasy, but as embodied presence. Notice what shifts in you when you do. That shift, however subtle, is the truth we'll explore today. Love not as sentiment, not as demand, but as regulation and liberation. Let's begin the physiology of love. When we say love makes us feel safe, what we're really describing is a biological event. Beneath the poetry and the philosophy, love is chemistry and electricity, hormones and neural networks, bodies resonating with one another in ways that science is only beginning to map. This doesn't take away its mystery. If anything, it deepens it. Because the closer we look, the more we see how finely tuned our nervous system is to connection, and how love is written into the body's design. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Let's begin with oxytocin, often called the love hormone. Oxytocin is released during touch, eye contact, sexual intimacy, breastfeeding, and even through acts of trust and kindness. When levels rise, the body shifts into states of calm, openness, and receptivity. Physiology. Oxytocin reduces activity in the amygdala, the part of the brain that scans for threat. With less alarm, the nervous system allows us to soften, to approach rather than defend. Chemistry. It interacts with dopamine pathways, making closeness not just soothing but rewarding. That's why affection feels good, why the warmth of a hug can lift us out of despair. Behavior. High oxytocin makes us more likely to trust, to cooperate, to forgive. It's not naive, it's biological. I felt this myself. After times of stress or conflict, a simple gesture of love, a hug from my children, the hand of a partner resting gently on mine, has shifted me instantly. My thoughts may still be racing, but my body tells a different story. You are safe, you are not alone, you can breathe again. But oxytocin also teaches us something important. Bonding is powerful, but it's not neutral. The same chemical that helps us love can also keep us tied to harmful bonds, returning again and again to those who hurt us, because the nervous system interprets any familiarity as safety. This is why awareness is vital. Oxytocin shows us the mechanism of bonding, but not whether the bond is healthy. That discernment is ours to cultivate. Dopamine, anticipation, and reward. If oxytocin is the glue of connection, dopamine is the spark. Dopamine is released in anticipation of reward, in this case, closeness, affection, and intimacy. It's why a message from someone we love can light up the body with excitement before we've even read the words. Physiology. Dopamine fires in the brain's reward pathways, the same circuits activated by food, music, or achievement. In love, the reward is connection itself. Neuroperception. Anticipation heightens arousal. We lean forward, we attune, we prepare to receive. The body becomes alert, alive. The shadow. This is also where the addictive side of love appears. Intermittent signals of affection, now warm, now cold, spike dopamine unpredictably, making the nervous system cling tighter. What feels like passion can sometimes be dysregulation disguised as desire. I used to confuse these dopamine spikes for proof of love. The thrill of waiting for a message, the rush when it arrived, the crash when silence followed. It felt intoxicating, almost sacred. But over time I saw the cost. My body wasn't regulated. It was swinging between craving and collapse. Real love, I learned, didn't leave me addicted. It left me steady. The vagus nerve, pathway of safety. At the heart of love's physiology is the vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve running from the brainstem through the face, heart, lungs, and gut. It is the core of the parasympathetic nervous system, the system of rest, digestion, and repair. Polyvagal theory. Stephen Porges describes how the vagus nerve has two branches, the dorsal, shutdown, collapse, and the ventral connection, social engagement. Love activates the ventral vagal pathway, allowing eye contact, prosody, warm tone of voice, and open body posture. Physiology. When ventral vagal tone is strong, the heartbeat steadies, breath deepens, and digestion resumes. We feel calm but alive. This is the bodily state of safe love. Experience. When someone smiles at us warmly, when their voice is soft, when their presence feels grounding, the vagus nerve is responding. Love, quite literally, travels this pathway. Think of how babies calm when spoken to in a gentle voice, or how lovers relax into each other's gaze. These are vagal events. They are not just psychological, they are the body telling itself. I am safe with you. Unsafe love. When regulation fails, not all relationships regulate us. Some destabilize instead. In those cases, the same systems that soothe in safe love become dysregulated. Oxytocin betrayal. Bonds form even in abuse, keeping survivors tied to harmful partners. The nervous system misreads familiarity as safety. Dopamine chaos. Intermittent reinforcement, love one day, coldness the next, hijacks reward pathways, creating craving cycles. Vagal collapse. Instead of ventral vagal engagement, the dorsal branch activates. Shutdown numbness, dissociation. Love becomes a source of fear rather than calm. I've known this too. Times when what I called love left me sleepless, anxious, and doubting myself. Times when, instead of softening me, the connection constricted me. In those moments, I learned to ask, is this relationship regulating me or destabilizing me? Does my nervous system feel safe here, or does it feel constantly braced for collapse? This was one of the hardest truths to face, that intensity is not the same as love, and that real love feels less like a storm and more like a steady flame. Scenario: holding the hand in crisis. Let's return to the scenario from the beginning. A loved one is in crisis. They're trembling, their breath shallow, words scattered. You reach for their hand. Step 1, touch. Skin-to-skin contact activates mechanoreceptors, sending signals through the vagus nerve. Oxytocin begins to rise. Step 2, eye contact. Mirror neurons engage. Seeing your calm face, their body begins to mirror the state. The amygdala reads safety. Step 3, breath. As your breathing steadies, theirs unconsciously follows. Co-regulation in action. Step 4, chemistry. Cortisol drops. Dopamine rises as the anticipation of comfort is fulfilled. Oxytocin bonds. Step 5, integration. The body moves from fight or flight into parasympathetic rest. Presence returns. Words can be spoken again. This isn't a metaphor. It's the body's sequence of love as regulation. And it's what makes love so vital. Without it, survival is anxious, jagged. With it, the nervous system remembers peace. Attachment and stability attachment theory shows how early bonds shape the nervous system's template for love. Secure attachment. Steady caregiving builds strong vagal tone, making regulation easier in adulthood. Love feels safe, not threatening. Anxious attachment. Inconsistent caregiving primes the nervous system for hypervigilance. Love feels unstable, leading to pursuit. Avoidant attachment. Neglect teaches the system to numb. Love feels overwhelming, leading to withdrawal. Disorganized attachment. Trauma creates a paradox. The one who soothes is also the one who scares. Love is danger. Danger is love. In my own healing, I began to see how these patterns played out. Times when I longed for closeness, but panicked when it arrived. Times when I trusted too quickly, confusing charm with safety. Times when I withdrew, not because I didn't want love, but because my nervous system couldn't handle the intensity. Recognizing these patterns wasn't about blame. It was about compassion, seeing my body as a survivor, not a saboteur. Love as regulation, not possession. Perhaps the most radical shift is this. Love is not possession, not ownership, not control. Love is regulation. The question is not, do you belong to me? But, do we bring each other into safety and freedom? If a relationship leaves you more anxious than calm and confused, more constricted than open, it is not love, however intense it feels. If it leaves you grounded, alive, able to face life with more courage, that is love, however ordinary it looks from the outside. Love is not proven by how loud it shouts, but by how deeply it steadies. Philosophical reflection. Love as biology and mystery. Some might fear that by reducing love to chemistry and physiology, we strip it of its magic. But I believe the opposite. To see how the body itself is wired for love, how neurons, hormones, and nerves collaborate to create connection, is to glimpse the wonder of being alive. Philosophers and poets have always said love is divine, transcendent, ineffable. Neuroscience doesn't contradict this. It shows us the pathways through which the divine is embodied. Love is not less mysterious because it's biological. It's more. It is the miracle of biology becoming transcendence. So when we speak of love, let us not imagine only sentiment or story. Let us remember the body. Oxytocin rises with touch. Dopamine sparks with anticipation. The vagus nerve steadies the heart. Cortisol falls in the presence of trust. Love is regulation. Love is the nervous system's reminder that safety is possible, not just alone, but together. And yet love is also more than regulation. It is liberation, not the closing of doors, but the opening of space. Not possession, but expansion. In the next part, we'll explore how love frees as much as it grounds, how, in its truest form, love is the force that lets us breathe deeper, stand taller, and live more fully. Liberation through love. When most of us first hear the phrase love sets you free, it sounds like poetry. A romantic sentiment, maybe even a cliché. But when you really live it, when you feel it in the nervous system, it becomes something much deeper. Because love, at its core, is not about constriction or possession. It is about expansion. It is the widening of breath, the softening of fear, the invitation to be more fully yourself. If love as regulation steadies us, love as liberation opens us. It takes the nervous system out of the small, contracted state of survival and moves it into a state of curiosity, creativity, and aliveness. Love, in its truest form, doesn't bind us tighter to someone else's expectations. It helps us discover the freedom of being wholly ourselves and of offering that self freely to another. The distinction, regulation versus liberation. It's important to see how regulation and liberation are not opposites, but stages of the same dance. Regulation. When love co-regulates us, it brings safety. The body comes out of threat mode. Heart rate slows, cortisol lowers, vagal tone steadies. We stop bracing for danger. This is foundational. Without it, love is unstable. Liberation. Once safety is established, the nervous system can expand. The prefrontal cortex opens to creativity, empathy, and big-picture thinking. Dopamine and serotonin balance anticipation with contentment. Instead of simply surviving, we begin to thrive. Love as liberation is the movement from stability into flourishing. I've noticed this in my own relationships. When I was younger, I mistook intensity for love. The roller coaster of pursuit and withdrawal, the highs and lows. I thought that was passion. But my nervous system was never truly regulated in those connections. I was either clinging or collapsing. It wasn't until later, through healing and self-awareness, that I learned what safe love felt like. Steady, calm, consistent. And only when I had that baseline could I even glimpse the possibility of liberation, the freedom to explore, to create, to be fully myself within love. Love as expansion, not constriction. Think about the physical markers of fear. Shallow breath, tight muscles, hunched posture, darting eyes. Now think about the physical markers of love. Shoulders opening, breath deepening, gaze softening, voice warm. Fear constricts, love expands. In fear, the nervous system prepares for survival. It contracts, narrows, shields. In love, the nervous system prepares for connection. It opens, invites, blossoms. This expansion is not just metaphorical, it is physiological. The ventral vagal state of the parasympathetic system literally allows for greater social engagement, creativity, and openness. Blood flows more easily. Muscles relax. Immune function strengthens. Love, in the body, is liberation from the cage of chronic stress. Philosophically, this expansion has always been recognized. Mystics across traditions speak of love as boundless, infinite, spacious. Rumi wrote of being out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing. There is a field. I'll meet you there. That field is love's liberation, the freedom from judgment, the freedom to simply be. Possession versus freedom. One of the greatest confusions in relationships is mistaking possession for love. Our culture reinforces it constantly. You're mine. I can't live without you. You complete me. While these phrases might sound romantic, they actually describe constriction. They turn love into ownership, dependence, even control. True love, by contrast, liberates both people. It says, you are free to be yourself. I am free to be myself. And in that freedom, we choose each other. This doesn't mean absence of commitment or responsibility. Liberation doesn't cancel loyalty. It transforms it. When love is chosen freely, rather than clung to from fear, it becomes more powerful. Because then it isn't survival, it's devotion. I've lived on both sides of this. I've been in relationships where control disguised itself as love, where suspicion, jealousy, and possessiveness claimed to be proof of care. But it never felt like care in my body. It felt tight, suffocating, depleting. And I've also tasted the opposite. Love that gave me room to breathe, to create, to follow my path, while still being held in safety. That love didn't shrink me. It expanded me. It gave me more of myself. Cross-cultural perspectives on love and freedom. Different traditions have long recognized this dual nature of love. In Tantra, from India, love and sexuality are seen not as bondage but as pathways to liberation. Union is not about possession, but about dissolving the boundaries of ego, finding freedom in shared presence. In Taoism, China, harmony and love comes from balance, yin and yang, flow and receptivity. Love is liberation because it aligns us with the natural order, not because it binds us to rigid rules. In indigenous traditions worldwide, love is often embedded in community. It is not restrictive ownership, but a web of reciprocity and freedom. To love someone is to respect their autonomy as part of the whole. In Christianity's mystical stream, love is liberation from sin, from separation, from isolation. Perfect love casts out fear, as the text says. Fear constricts, love frees. These perspectives converge on a truth. Love's purpose is not to trap us, but to set us free. The shadow of possession is cultural, not universal. It is patriarchy, capitalism, and control that turned love into ownership. At its root, love is liberation. Love as liberation in the nervous system. Let's bring this back to the body. Fear constricts. Cortisol, adrenaline, and amygdala hyperactivation. Narrow focus, tunnel vision. Love liberates. Oxytocin calms the amygdala. Serotonin steadies mood. Dopamine balances reward with contentment. The prefrontal cortex re-engages, giving perspective and creativity. In liberation, the nervous system doesn't just survive the moment. It imagines new futures. It allows exploration, play, and curiosity. This is why children flourish in love, not just because it keeps them safe, but because it sets them free to learn, to create, to dream. Adults are no different. In love, we thrive. Spiritual dimensions. Love as divine liberation. There is a reason so many spiritual traditions equate love with the divine, because love liberates us not just from fear, but from the illusion of separateness. In Hindu bhakti devotion, love of God frees the soul from karma. In Sufi mysticism, love annihilates the ego, leaving only union with the beloved. In Buddhism, compassion, karuna, and loving kindness, metta, liberate us from suffering and delusion. In indigenous cosmologies, love connects us to ancestors, earth, and cosmos, dissolving the false boundary between self and world. Whether you interpret these literally or metaphorically, the message is the same. Love is not a cage. Love is a door to greater freedom of self, of spirit, of being. Personal reflection. From need to sanctuary, for much of my life, I understood love as need. I thought being loved meant someone filling the gaps I couldn't fill myself. And for a while it worked, until the gaps grew deeper, the dependency more painful. Love based on need is fragile. It collapses under the weight of fear. Through healing, I learned a different experience. I began to see love not as someone else completing me, but as a sanctuary. A space where I could be whole and still be connected. A space where I wasn't reduced or erased, but amplified. In those relationships, I didn't feel I had to perform, prove, or protect. I could simply be. And that state of being regulated my nervous system more than any words could. It was love as safety, and beyond that, love as liberation. The paradox of love and freedom. Some might ask, if love liberates, does it mean love is detached, unconcerned? Quite the opposite. Real love cares deeply, but its care doesn't bind. It doesn't smother. It doesn't say, you must be mine. It says, you are free to be fully yourself, and I will meet you there. This is the paradox. The less we try to possess, the more deeply we can connect. The more we free each other, the more fully we can love. So when we speak of liberation through love, we're not speaking of grand gestures or perfect ideals. We're speaking of the nervous system allowed to open, of the spirit allowed to breathe, of the human being allowed to be whole. Love regulates first. It calms the alarms, steadies the system. And then it liberates. It opens the field, expands the possibilities, allows both people to grow into more than they were before. This is why love is not just survival, not just comfort. It is a transformation. It is the force that takes us beyond fear, beyond control, beyond possession, into freedom. In the next part, we'll turn inward again into personal reflections, looking at my own journey of moving from love as need into love as sanctuary, and how those lessons continue to shape how I live and love today. From love as need to love as sanctuary. When I look back across the landscape of my life, I can see the ways I once misunderstood love. For years, I thought it was something to be earned, something to prove myself worthy of. Love felt conditional, fragile, and often tied to how well I could anticipate another person's needs while burying my own. I thought if I gave enough, tried enough, endured enough, love would finally be safe. But love in that form was never safe. It was a mirror of the survival strategies my nervous system had built long before: fawning, pleasing, overextending. Love became a kind of bargaining. If I give all of myself, maybe I won't be abandoned. If I keep proving, maybe I won't be forgotten. It took years of unraveling before I realized that this wasn't love at all. It was fear dressed as devotion. And that distinction has changed everything. Discovering love through self-healing. The turning point came when I began to focus not on who I wanted to love me, but on whether I truly loved and cared for myself. Healing asked me questions that relationships never had. Could I sit with my own company without rushing to fill the silence? Could I speak to myself with kindness instead of criticism? Could I soothe my nervous system without demanding someone else carry that responsibility? The more I answered yes to these, the more I noticed something subtle but powerful. My capacity to love others expanded. When I felt empty inside, love became grasping, a way of pulling energy to fill a void. But as I found care for myself, love became overflowing. It wasn't about taking, it was about giving, sharing, and creating. Love became a sanctuary, a space I could offer to others without losing myself in the process. Embodied shifts. The nervous system learned safety healing wasn't abstract. It happened in the body. I noticed the difference between anxious longing, the tight chest, the restless mind, the need for reassurance and calm presence, where breath deepened, shoulders softened, and I felt at home in my own skin. I began to recognize that when I was regulated, I could meet others with patience. I could listen without defensiveness. I could allow them to be who they were without making it a threat to my existence. The nervous system, once wired for hypervigilance, began to rest. And in that rest, love became possible in a new way. This wasn't just theory, it was lived. I experienced how my own healing literally expanded my capacity for love. Love as overflow, not transaction. One of the clearest lessons has been that love isn't meant to be transactional. When I lived in need, love often felt like a bargain, an exchange of validation, comfort, or attention. And those bargains always broke down. They left me exhausted, resentful, or disillusioned. Through healing, I learned what it meant for love to overflow. When I was grounded in myself, when I cultivated care, compassion, and acceptance internally, I no longer came to relationships seeking to fill a hole. I came to share what was already full. This doesn't mean I became invulnerable or stopped needing others. We are social beings, we all require connection. But the quality shifted. Instead of desperation, there was generosity. Instead of clinging, there was freedom. Boundaries as love. Another revelation was that boundaries were not barriers to love, but expressions of it. In the past, I let people cross my boundaries because I thought that was what love required. Saying no felt like betrayal. Holding limits felt selfish. But as I healed, I discovered that boundaries are not rejection. They are clarity. They are what allow love to be sustainable rather than corrosive. When I honored my own needs and limits, I noticed that I felt less anxious and more grounded. I could give without depletion. I could receive it without resentment. Boundaries became part of the sanctuary I could offer others. A sanctuary isn't a place of chaos or collapse. It is a safe structure, and love to me now feels the same. Love as sanctuary, not performance. Perhaps the most profound shift was moving from love as performance to love as sanctuary. In my earlier years, I often felt that love was conditional on how well I could perform, how charming, attentive, or self-sacrificing I could be. If I failed to meet the role, love would evaporate. Healing helped me realize that true love does not require performance. It requires presence. It doesn't ask us to be flawless. It asks us to be authentic. I began to recognize relationships where I could rest, where I didn't have to prove, where simply existing as myself was enough. And in those relationships, I felt a depth of love far greater than anything performance had ever achieved. Reflections on misunderstanding and projection. Along this path, I also had to face the shadows, the misunderstandings and projections that shaped my earlier relationships. I was often accused of things that weren't true: dishonesty, cheating, withholding. At first, these accusations baffled me. I couldn't understand why I wasn't being seen for who I truly was. But with time, I learned that those accusations often revealed more about the accuser than about me. They were projections, shields for their own fears, insecurities, or unhealed wounds. That didn't make the accusations hurt any less, but it gave me perspective. Instead of internalizing blame, I began to ask, what is mine to own and what belongs to them? That question saved me from cycles of self-doubt. It helped me stand more securely in my own truth, even when others couldn't or wouldn't see it. Freedom inside love. The greatest gift of healing has been the discovery that love does not have to feel like a cage. I no longer confuse intensity with intimacy, nor do I confuse possession with devotion. Now when I think of love, I think of freedom, not freedom to abandon or neglect, but freedom to grow, to expand, to be. I think of love as the quiet strength of presence, the steady rhythm of breath shared with someone, the calm, knowing that neither of us needs to diminish for the other to flourish. Love as liberation is not abstract anymore. It lives in my body. It is the peace I feel when I know I am enough, and the joy I feel when I can share that enoughness with others. As I reflect on this journey, I see a simple truth. My capacity to love others grew only when I learned to love and care for myself. Without that foundation, love was fear, performance, and transaction. With it, love became a sanctuary, overflow, and freedom. This is not a finished process. It is ongoing. There are still moments when the old patterns whisper, moments of doubt, moments of grasping. But now I recognize them. I breathe. I return to the body. And I remember, love is not scarcity. Love is abundance. In the next section, we'll explore practices for love as regulation, concrete ways to embody these lessons through breath, ritual, and co-regulation, so that love can continue to be both stabilizing and liberating. Practices for love as regulation. If love is more than sentiment, if it is truly a nervous system event, a synchrony between bodies, then it cannot remain an idea. It must be lived, breathed, and practiced. Love must move through muscles, lungs, eyes, tone, and rhythm. It must be enacted in the ordinary moments of life, not just declared in grand ones. So here I want to turn to practice. Not practice as in mechanical drills, but practice as in ways of being that deepen our capacity to love and be loved. Practices that regulate, anchor, and expand us. Practices that turn the nervous system from a battlefield of fear into a sanctuary of connection. The breath as bridge, the simplest and yet the most profound practice for love is breath. When two people sit together, simply noticing their breath, something extraordinary happens. Without trying, their rhythms begin to align. One exhales, the other follows. One slows, the other mirrors. Breath becomes the silent thread weaving nervous systems together. Science shows us why. The vagus nerve, that great mediator of calm and connection, is stimulated by slow, deep breathing. Each long exhale signals safety. Each shared rhythm communicates, you are not alone. In relationships, I've noticed this most clearly in moments of tension. When anger rises, voices tighten and shoulders lift. Stopping to take 3 slow breaths can change the entire tone. If both partners breathe together, the fight dissolves into something else. A remembering that beneath the argument lies connection, and beneath connection lies love. A simple practice. Sit with someone you love. Place a hand gently on your chest or belly. Breathe in through the nose, slowly, letting the chest or belly rise. Exhale twice as long, softening the jaw, releasing the shoulders. After a few minutes, notice. Your breaths have likely synchronized without effort. This is not just relaxation, it is co-regulation. It is love enacted through lungs. Rituals of presence doesn't happen by accident. In a world of distractions, speed and noise, presence must be chosen. That is why rituals matter. Rituals create containers for love to be experienced, not as a fleeting feeling, but as an embodied practice. These can be small: a morning cup of tea shared in silence, an evening walk, the simple touch of hands before sleep. What matters is not the form, but the repetition. The nervous system learns safety through consistency. When my own life felt most unstable, rituals became lifelines. Even the smallest ones, lighting a candle before journaling, pausing for gratitude before meals, reminded my body that safety and love were still possible. And when I shared those rituals with others, I noticed the same: a deepening of connection, a rhythm of belonging. A practice you might try: choose one ordinary act you already do daily, drinking tea, brushing teeth, and engage with friends. Turn it into a ritual by bringing intention. Breathe, name gratitude, share the act with another if possible. Let the nervous system associate the ritual with calm and presence. Love thrives in these repeated sanctuaries. They become anchors, reminding both body and heart. You are safe here. The art of stillness is not absence. It is present distilled. In relationships, we often chase stimulation, activities, words, and touch. But some of the most profound regulation happens in stillness. Two people sitting side by side, no words needed, the simple resonance of bodies in quiet. For trauma survivors especially, stillness can feel unbearable at first. Silence may echo with old ghosts, but over time, with safety, stillness becomes medicine. It teaches the nervous system that connection does not require performance, that love exists even in the absence of doing. Try this. Sit with a loved one for 5 minutes in silence. Notice the urge to speak, fidget, fill the space. Let the urge soften, and instead notice the other's presence. Feel how the body gradually relaxes into shared stillness. This practice can feel awkward at first, but with repetition, it becomes a profound form of intimacy. Because love, at its root, is the ability to be with. Eye contact, the nervous system's mirror. The eyes are not just windows to the soul. They are regulators of the nervous system. Prolonged, soft eye contact activates the social engagement system of the vagus nerve. Infants regulate through their mother's gaze. Adults, too, find calm or activation in the eyes of those they love. A soft gaze says, "I see you, you are safe with me." But for many, especially those with trauma, eye contact can be triggering. It may feel invasive, exposing. This is why eye contact as a practice must be gentle, consensual, and titrated. A practice I've used over time to co-regulate: sit facing a partner or friend. Look into each other's eyes softly, not staring, simply noticing. If it becomes overwhelming, look away briefly, then return. After a few minutes, share what you noticed in your body. This is not about romance alone. It works with friends, children, and even groups. Eye contact is regulated because it signals, "I am with you." Touch, as communication touch, is one of the most primal regulators of the nervous system. A hand on the shoulder, a hug, the brush of fingers, all release oxytocin, lower cortisol, and signal safety. Yet touch must be approached with care. For some, especially survivors of violence, touch can trigger rather than soothe. The key is attunement, noticing whether touch is welcome, whether the body leans in or pulls away. I've learned that touch is less about technique and more about presence. A distracted hug means little. A conscious, attuned embrace can change an entire day. Practice. Offer a 20-second hug with someone you trust. Breathe slowly while embracing. Notice how the body shifts. Heart rate slows, muscles soften, oxytocin rises. Touch, when safe and consensual, is not just affection. It is a nervous system medicine. Shared movement, dance, walk, play movement is another way love becomes embodied. Dancing, walking, and even simple stretches done together align rhythms, release endorphins, and create resonance. One of the most regulating practices I've experienced is walking side by side with someone. The synchronized steps, the shared rhythm, create a wordless intimacy. It is the nervous system saying, "We are moving through the world together." Practice idea. Take a walk with someone, matching your pace to theirs. Notice the rhythm of footsteps, the sway of bodies. Let conversation come naturally, or walk in silence. This synchrony builds safety not through words, but through embodied rhythm. Repair rituals after conflict is inevitable. What matters is repair. Research shows that relationships thrive not because conflict is absent, but because repair is consistent. And repair is a deeply nervous system event. It is the process of returning from threat to safety, from cortisol to oxytocin, from disconnection to resonance. Practices for repair. Pause when escalation rises. Breathe separately, then return. Use physical cues, a gentle touch, and a softened tone to signal safety. Acknowledge the rupture without defensiveness. "I see I hurt you." End with a ritual of reconnection, a hug, shared breath, or agreed phrase. I found that the speed and sincerity of repair often matter more than the size of the conflict. Love deepens when repair is embodied, not just spoken. Collective practices, circles, and song love is not only personal, it is collective. One of the most powerful regulators I've witnessed is group synchrony, chanting, singing, and moving together. In these spaces, the nervous system feels part of something larger. Isolation dissolves, belonging takes root. Indigenous traditions have long known this: song, drumming, dance, ritual. These were never mere art forms. They were nervous system technologies, weaving individual bodies into collective resonance. Even in modern life we glimpse this: singing at concerts, chanting at protests, and silence in vigils. These moments remind us, love is not only two bodies co-regulating, it is many bodies resonating as one. Practice suggestion: join or create a circle of friends, family, and community. Choose a simple chant, song, or rhythm. Repeat together until the room vibrates with shared resonance. Notice the shift. Stress dissolves, connection blooms. Love as regulation is not confined to couples. It is a collective birthright, the role of creativity. Finally, creativity itself can be a practice of love. Writing, painting, music, when shared, these regulate and bond. A poem offered, a song sung, a picture drawn, these bypass analysis and speak directly to the nervous system. I've often found that sharing my creative work, whether through the Inversiverse, Unfiltered Human, or my books, creates resonance with people I may never meet. It is another form of co-regulation, stretched across space and time. Practice. Create something small, a line of poetry, a sketch, a song. Share it with someone you trust. Notice how their response, their presence, regulates your nervous system. Love becomes liberation when creativity flows without fear of rejection. These practices are not prescriptions. They are invitations. Each body is different. Each history carries its own scars and longings. But what unites us is this: the nervous system thrives on safety, resonance, rhythm, and presence. And love is the name we give when those conditions are met. Through breath, ritual, stillness, gaze, touch, movement, repair, community, and creativity, love becomes more than a word. It becomes a regulation. It becomes a sanctuary. It becomes liberation. As we move toward the closing reflections of this episode, I want to remind you, these practices are not about perfection. They are about presence. They are ways of making love tangible in the body, again and again. Because love is not only what we feel. It is what we do, what we practice, what we breathe into being. Closing reflection: love is one of those words that gets repeated so often that it can lose its weight. We hear it in songs, we see it in advertisements, we say it casually at the end of phone calls. Yet beneath the layers of sentiment and culture, beneath the cliches and the scripts, love reveals itself as something far more elemental. The nervous system's most profound state of safety and expansion. When we look back across this journey, through the biology, the philosophy, the reflections, and the practices, what we return to is this: love is not only an emotion we feel, it is a state we embody. It is the synchrony of breath and heartbeat, the calm of presence, the expansion that comes when fear loosens its grip. Love as healing. The nervous system is shaped by injury, by the abandonments, shames, and traumas we've carried, but it is also shaped by care. Every moment of co-regulation, every steady presence, every safe touch reshapes the nervous system toward trust. When we sit beside someone in pain and simply stay, their heart rate slows. When we hold a hand during a crisis, oxytocin rises and cortisol falls. When we repair after rupture, the body learns that the connection does not end at conflict. Love, in this sense, is the nervous system's deepest medicine. I've noticed in my own journey that when I finally began to love and care for myself, truly, not as an idea, but as an embodied practice, I gained a greater capacity to love others. For years, I thought love was about giving everything away, about meeting the needs of others, even if it drained me. But love without self-regulation is sacrifice, not sanctuary. It took healing work, reflection, and countless lessons for me to see that when I tend to my own body, when I honor my own limits, I create a stable foundation from which love can flow outward. That shift from depletion to fullness changed everything. It was not selfishness, it was sustainability. And only then could I offer others a love that did not collapse me. Love as liberation. If regulation is love's foundation, liberation is its horizon. So often, relationships are framed as cages. Love as possession, attachment as control, intimacy as ownership. But real love, embodied love, liberates. It doesn't trap the other, nor does it collapse the self. It creates space for both to expand. Spiritual traditions across cultures have always pointed toward this. Sufi poets spoke of love as the force that dissolves the self into unity. Taoist texts describe love as flowing with the natural rhythms of life. In indigenous traditions, love is not confined to couples but extends to community, land, and ancestors, a web of belonging that frees rather than binds. Liberation in love means this: I do not need to grasp or possess you to feel whole. Instead, in loving you, I become more fully myself, and I allow you to do the same. Regulation provides the safety for this expansion. Liberation provides the freedom to live it. From need to sanctuary, looking back, I see how often my younger self mistook need for love. I thought longing alone was proof of care, That desire meant depth, but need on its own is dysregulation. It is the nervous system searching desperately for what it has not yet found in itself. As healing deepened, I began to sense a different quality. Love that felt like a sanctuary, not survival. Connection that didn't spike my cortisol, but steadied my breath. The difference was striking. One felt addictive, the other expansive. One left me grasping, the other left me grounded. And here lies the truth. Love that liberates is not about filling a void. It is about meeting from wholeness. Not perfection, not flawless healing, but enough self-awareness and nervous system steadiness to say, I choose you not because I cannot survive without you, but because with you I thrive more fully. Practices that last. The practices we explored in the last part, breath, ritual, stillness, touch, movement, repair, and creativity, are not temporary fixes. They are ways of embodying this truth again and again, because love is not a destination. It is a rhythm to return to. We will falter, we will project, we will forget. But every time we come back to breath, to presence, to compassion, we re-enter the state of love. That is liberation, not never falling, but always finding the way home. Closing the arc. As we bring this episode and this arc to a close, I want to acknowledge the path we've walked together. We began with attachment and the body, episode 21, moved through the push and pull of intimacy, episode 22, learned the language of boundaries, episode 23, opened the difficult terrain of sex and love, episode 24, confronted power and coercion, episode 25, explored mirror neurons and resonance, episode 26, faced conflict and repair, episode 27, touched the ache of loneliness, episode 28, and finally we looked into the shadow, episode 29. And now at episode 30 we arrive at love, not as sentiment, not as fleeting feeling, but as the nervous system's most profound synchrony. This whole journey has been about peeling back illusions, facing wounds, and naming what we often bury. And through it all, one truth has stood out. The body knows. It knows when love is true. It knows when safety is present. It knows when the connection is healing. Invitation forward. So I want to leave you with this invitation. Notice love in your body this week. Not as an idea, not as a word, but as a sensation. Notice how your chest feels when someone sees you without judgment. Notice how your breath shifts when you sit beside someone in silence. Notice how your stomach relaxes when laughter flows. Notice how your shoulders soften when someone truly listens. That is love, not abstract, not lofty, concrete, embodied, physiological. And when you notice it, let it expand. Let it remind you that love is not scarce, not fragile. It is the body's natural state when safety, presence, and freedom align. As I close this episode, I want to thank you for walking this arc with me. These conversations are not easy. They bring us face to face with wounds, shadows, and vulnerabilities we'd often rather ignore. But by walking through them, by speaking them aloud, we create space for healing not just individually, but collectively. Love as regulation, love as liberation. That is the path forward. Not a love that binds or blinds, but a love that steadies, expands, and frees. The body knows. When I began The Body Knows, I didn't know exactly where this journey would take me. What I knew, and what many of you perhaps felt too, was that the body carries truths that words often struggle to hold. Over these 30 episodes, we've walked through biology and trauma, memory and projection, intimacy and conflict, loneliness and shadow, always returning to the same starting point. The body knows. This final reflection isn't just about closing one episode. It's about gathering the threads of an entire arc, 10 episodes of inquiry into how our nervous systems shape, distort, and sometimes heal the way we live and love. My intention here is to hold everything we've explored in one space so that you can step back, see the whole picture, and carry forward what resonates most in your own life. The nervous system as foundation. From the first episode, the nervous system has been the anchor. We've returned again and again to the same truth. Survival comes first. Whether it is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, whether it's dissociation or hypervigilance, the body doesn't ask if a response is logical. It only asks if it can keep us alive. This truth alone reshapes how we understand ourselves and others. When someone lashes out, withdraws, or goes silent, it is rarely about malice. More often, it is their nervous system choosing safety over truth, protection over connection. This doesn't excuse harm, but it reframes it. We stop asking only, what's wrong with me or them, and begin asking, what happened in their body and what state are they in? That shift from judgment to understanding is not just intellectual, it's practical. It changes how we meet conflict, how we interpret silence, and how we hold space for both ourselves and others. Memory, trauma, and dissociation. Another central theme has been the way trauma reshapes the nervous system's map of reality. We've explored how trauma isn't just an event that happened in the past. It's a living imprint, a shift in chemistry, a rewiring of circuits, a new baseline of vigilance. Dissociation, depersonalization, derealization. These aren't abstract concepts, they're survival strategies. When the body cannot fight or flee, it leaves, it numbs, it detaches. That may keep us alive in the moment, but the cost is authenticity. a piece of self goes quiet. I've observed this pattern not only in my own experience, but in countless stories we've worked through here. The silence that feels unbearable, the intimacy that triggers withdrawal, the argument that suddenly becomes a replay of childhood fears. The nervous system doesn't forget, even when we want to. And yet, within that recognition lies hope. If the nervous system can be shaped by trauma, it can also be reshaped by safety. Presence, breath, grounding, compassion. These slowly write new patterns into the body. Attachment and intimacy. As the series moved deeper into relationships, we turned toward attachment. We explored how childhood imprints live on in adult intimacy, the anxious pull, the avoidant retreat, the fearful ambivalence. Attachment theory is often treated as static. You are anxious, avoidant, or secure. But through the nervous system lens, attachment becomes dynamic. It's not a fixed label, but a real-time pattern of arousal and collapse, of reaching and withdrawing. One thing I've noticed, and perhaps you have too, is that people reveal their attachment energy very quickly. It shows up in their responses, their availability, and their comfort with closeness. Instead of waiting months to decipher someone's patterns, the nervous system often signals within days or even hours. When we learn to trust those signals, we save ourselves cycles of confusion and heartbreak. And attachment is not just about partners. It's about friends, families, and communities. Wherever there is bond, there is nervous system resonance, boundaries as language. We then explored boundaries, not as abstract moral rules, but as the body's way of saying yes and no. Tension, withdrawal, openness, expansion. These are boundary signals. Many of us grew up in systems where boundaries were either ignored or punished. We were taught to comply, to fawn, to swallow discomfort for the sake of harmony. The cost was self-respect, clarity, and health. In my own observations, I've seen how costly it is to overlook these signals. Allowing people past boundaries out of fear of rejection, or overlooking red flags because of attachment to the idea of connection. These patterns erode dignity over time. And yet, once we begin to honor the body's signals, boundaries stop feeling like rejection and begin to feel like love. Because in the end, boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about making connections sustainable. Sex, love, and power episodes on intimacy and sexuality revealed how deeply the nervous system shapes desire. Arousal and safety are not separate. They are intertwined. Trauma can short-circuit intimacy, leaving the body present but the mind far away. At the same time, we explored how charm, withdrawal, and re-engagement cycles manipulate the nervous system into bonds that feel unbreakable. Intermittent reinforcement, love bombing, and gaslighting aren't just psychological tactics. They are biological hijacks. One of the hardest truths we've uncovered is that unsafe love destabilizes rather than soothes. Desire can be real, even overwhelming, and yet if the nervous system is in collapse or hypervigilance, intimacy becomes painful, addictive, or numbing. Love that heals, by contrast, is regulating. It calms, it anchors, it is free. Mirror neurons, resonance, and collectivity midway through the arc. We widen the lens beyond individuals into groups. Mirror neurons, those tiny cells that fire both when we act and when we observe, create resonance. They explain why moods spread in families, why crowds synchronize in protests, and why laughter is contagious. Resonance can heal through singing, chanting, and collective joy. But it can also harm through mob violence, political manipulation, or cultic control. This is one of the perspectives I'll carry forward most strongly. That the self is never entirely separate from the group. We are porous beings. To live consciously is not only to know our own nervous system, but to notice which collective resonances we choose to enter. Loneliness, shadow, and projection. Toward the later episodes, we turn to the more hidden terrains. Loneliness and shadow. Loneliness is not just an emotion. It is a biological alarm, a signal of unmet social need. Chronic loneliness reshapes the brain and body much like hunger or thirst. Longing is the nervous system's way of pulling us back into the collective, because isolation has always been dangerous to survival. The shadow, on the other hand, is what we disown. It is the jealousy, the fear, the anger, the desire we cannot accept in ourselves, projected outward onto others. In relationships, the shadow often becomes an accusation. You don't care. You're unfaithful. You're dishonest. Through reflection and dialogue, I've come to see projection not as failure, but as an invitation. When an accusation arises, it points towards something unacknowledged within. Recognizing this doesn't erase harm, but it creates space for compassion and growth. Love as regulation, love as liberation. We closed with love, reframed not as sentiment, but as nervous system synchrony. Love regulates. It slows the heart, softens the muscles, and deepens the breath. Real love is not the spike of adrenaline or the crash of dopamine. It is the calm expansion of oxytocin, the steadying rhythm of co-regulation. And love liberates. It frees us from possession, control, and fear. It allows two people or entire communities to expand together without collapse. This, I believe, is the deepest lesson of the body knows, that love is not fragile, it is not scarce, it is not dependent on perfection. Love is the body's natural state when safety and freedom align. What has changed looking back? What has shifted for me is perspective. I no longer interpret behavior only as personal choice. I see the nervous system behind it. I no longer chase connections that destabilize me. I honor the body's call for stability. I no longer dismiss projection as weakness. I recognize it as survival and as an invitation. I no longer mistake intensity for love. I look for regulation and liberation. These changes are not abstract. They are implemented daily, in conversations with loved ones, in the boundaries I hold, in the connections I choose, in the way I meet conflict, in the way I parent, and in the way I care for myself. Closing the circle. So here we are, 30 episodes later. We've walked through survival and memory, trauma and healing, intimacy and shadow, loneliness and love. At every turn, the nervous system has been our guide. If there is one truth to carry forward, it is this: awareness changes everything. When we notice the body's signals, when we learn its language, when we respond with compassion instead of reactivity, everything shifts. Relationships soften, conflicts become repairable, and love becomes sustainable. This series was never about offering final answers. It was about opening a space of awareness. And in that sense, the work doesn't end here. The body will continue to speak. The question is whether we will continue to listen. As I close The Body Knows, I want to share with you where this path now leads. Over these 30 episodes, we've explored how the nervous system shapes our relationships, our memories, and our capacity for love. But underneath all of this lies another invisible architecture, the one built from words themselves. Language is not neutral. It doesn't just describe reality, it constructs it. The words we inherit from families, cultures, religions, and institutions shape the way we see ourselves and one another. They can soothe the nervous system or ignite it. They can create belonging or fracture it. They can free us into connection or bind us into control. This is why my next project is called the Linguaverse, a deep exploration of how words, metaphors, and stories act like nervous system spells. Just as our bodies hold memory, our languages hold entire histories of power, projection, and possibility. In this new series, we'll ask, how do the stories we repeat shape our perception? How do ideologies hide inside everyday phrases? How can we reclaim language so that it liberates rather than confines us? If The Body Knows was about listening to the signals of the nervous system, the Linguaverse is about listening to the signals of speech itself. Together, we'll map how words create worlds, how silence carries power, and how reclaiming language can be part of collective healing. So as we end here, we also begin again. The body speaks, and so does the word. And the journey into the Linguaverse is where we'll follow next. The body knows. It has always been known. And as we move forward, in our relationships, in our communities, in our world, may we remember to listen. Thank you for walking this journey with me. And for the final time, you've been listening to The Body Knows. James Miller.